Welcome to my video on creating my own 3D model. I will show an example of what I call a shortcut cookie cutter approach for a Star Trek ship example. So here, step one, you first need to acquire like 2D views. This approach goes from 2D views to making a 3D model. So here I'm showing an example with a Romulan Scout. So first you want to convert this into a black and white image. So you can use your favorite, like photo editing software, GIMP, even PowerPoint. You can even do some of this. So here I'm showing, a side view, top view, front view. So this will essentially represent your cookie cutter in your 3 axes. So I, for example, use TinkerCAD. So you can import, for example, an SVG, scalable vector graphics file, like into TinkerCAD. So you will set it up as a plate, and then straightforward to import it like that. So the next step will be you want to have basically 3 of those plates. And you'll set them as, whole to basically, cut away. I have a slab here that would represent, something that is like bigger than the volume of the ship. So the trick here is to really line up these 3 plates in the 3 different axes. So you need to be quite precise to, for example, line up this one with the top view, and so forth with the side view. So when you're slicing and cutting each axis, it ends up looking correctly. So I kind of show that here. So you start your first plate, extend it over, and then merge these 2 objects, so that will be your first sort of cut and slice. Then you can repeat for the other axes. This one here, extended that over, merge again, so you're left with something that looks still quite strange. But if you do it on the final axis, so there's a plate down at the bottom there, extended it up, and you have something that looks, quite close. One thing I will note here is these 3 views are not going to give you a perfect representation of the 3D model. I mean, you can kind of see like here, and this is supposed to be rounded, but it's not. So this will require some extra steps if you want to make it look, more cleaner and nicer. So here, for example, I'm showing, doing these diagonal cuts with these objects. This is actually like a semi sort of circle cone there to basically round that off. So with that, you see it looks much closer and better. Not a perfect 3D model, but for these simple steps, you can get something that can look quite nice and quite quick. So I'm showing the kind of overall model here, and for comparison, you see what it looks like from the TV show. And I printed a small one, just about 2.5 inches, in size. My motivation was to make game board pieces, so worked well enough, and you can export this into like STL file for 3D printing. So I use the same process for some other ship models. So before I get to that, sort of a tip here, I first printed this in blue plastic. I had yellow, Sharpie marker, and that combined to give this green color, and so that looked actually quite good. So instead of having to buy extra green filament, if you have some markers around, you can kind of, make new colors out of them. So in this video, I described the process to create the 3D models from 2D images. I did the same thing here with this ship here. I first saw, a ship like this in a video game, DS9 Dominion Wars. This was like a strike cruiser. So I created a model with the same approach, but I did spend more time to give more features here to make it look sort of sharp here. These details at the top and at the bottom. And here's another example of the 3D print. Likewise here, this is a Karemma vessel. You can kind of see it there. Also ended up to be quite a nice print here. Borg vessel, like Renegade 1, seen in the TNG episode Descent 1 at the end of season 6. So printed it in gray, and then you can use a black Sharpie marker to make it look black. That was my motivation. Black is the Borg color. Borg Diamond here, similar approach, top, bottom, and side views, and then just added after the fact, merged in the center circle and the two top, bottom diamond shapes here, just to make it look kind of more like the real picture here. So some bonus slides here. I made some other models here, not using that 2D cookie cutter approach, just building up from basic shapes. This is Starfleet Starbase, something like Starbase 375, inspired to cut away some things. It's for a board game piece. This is supposed to be like a Dominion Starbase. I modeled it after what looked like from a video game, Ketracel White Facility. And this is kind of like a Borg Diamond, like colony ship. You might have seen that if you played Star Trek Armada. Some more examples of ships I made with other approaches. This was originally a soccer ball shape, and then just added extrusions, for the Star Trek Online Borg probe. Star Trek Armada 1, this was the assimilator vessel. So simple shape, 3 parallelogram, extrusions. To make it look more fancy, each side I basically added, text. So these are character shapes. You can kind of add them in. For example, you can tell that's a % sign, an equal sign, and this was a custom design I made. See, I printed it in different colors. I'll show in a future video. I'm using this for board game pieces. That was the motivation of this. A small tip here to make it sort of print well. These, warp nacelles. I added this part so it could stick to the bed, and you could just cut that away afterwards. So that was a tip how to make that particular part print better. And I have a slide here that shows some other, models. I'll talk about these more in a future video. These are for board game pieces. You can tell Federation Starduck, Starbase, Deep Space Nine type Starbase for the Cardassians, and the Dominion Starbase, a Klingon one, and this is in the style of the Romulans. So that ends my video here. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.